In this video, I'm going to show you how the big three triad shapes can expand into seventh chord shapes, and I'm going to show them primarily in arpeggio form, but I'll cover some voicings that you can derive from these shapes as well. I'm going to focus on the three main types of seventh chords: the major 7, the dominant 7, and the minor 7, but you can use these shapes and adjust the notes in order to create all the other types of seventh chords as well. So I'll cover this in the key of G, and I'm going to start with the first inversion big three shape. So these big three shapes are triad shapes that span all 6 strings and use close intervals so they don't skip any chord tones. Moving from 6th string all the way to the 1st string in one position, playing all of the notes of the chord. There's 3 of them, which is why I call them the big three. And so what I'm going to do today, like I said, is expand these into seventh chords. And so what I'm going to do first is show you the arpeggios for major 7, and then I'll do dominant 7 and then minor 7, and then I'll talk a little bit about the chords you can derive from them. So if I start here, this shape relates to an E-type bar chord, but in the E bar chord the first interval is a 5th, so what I do is move that up to the 3rd of the scale, and now I've got a shape that doesn't skip any chord tones. We go 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1. And so what I want to add is the major 7, and so I'm going to add that right before the 1 in both octaves. So first I'm humming B, D, and then I'm playing F sharp, which is the major 7, and then I'm going to play the same pattern. I'm going to play the G. So I started on B, D, F sharp, G, and then I'm going to play B, D, and then I'm going to reach on the same string to F sharp, and then G here on the 1st string. So I've got and when I practice that, a way that I like to do it is to go up and down like this. And that has a nice rhythmic feel for me that I can repeat. So that's the first position, and I'm going to move from the first inversion G big 3 shape to the second inversion, which is here, and this is shaped like an open C chord, moved up to G at the 10th fret of the 5th string. So what I'm going to do is the same as the shape before. I'm going to add in the 7th right before the root note in each octave. So I'm going to start on the 5, and I have the 7, F sharp, G, B, D, and here I like to do it this way, to reach up to the 7 on the 3rd string, because then it's a little bit of a reach to the G on the 2nd string, but this pattern feels really nice to me because you have these 2 adjacent strings playing a note a half step apart. So if I go 5, 7, 1, 3, 5, 7, 1, 3, then back down. I can do it again. And I like to play with these patterns. I like to pull off from the strings that have 2 notes, pull off from the higher note to the lower note, like here on the 3rd string. I like to pull off on my way back down, and then also there on the 5th string. So that's my second position. My third position is going to be root position, G major, big 3 root position shape. So here what I'm going to do is a little bit of a strange fingering, but I like doing it this way. I like to do 4th finger and 3rd finger on the first 2 notes, and then I reach my 2nd finger back 2 frets to play the 5th, and then I have the 7 here. So I've got 1, 3, 5, 7, then I'm hammering on into the G, usually I would hammer on, and then I do the next octave, which brings me to B on the second string, D, major 7 on the first string, F sharp, back down. So I'll do it slowly. So that's the last position of this. One way that you could practice these is to go through the 3 of them with a metronome and just play once through the pattern and move up like this. 1, 2. So that'd be one way to practice it. Next, I'm going to go into the dominant 7. So what we do to make a major 7 into a dominant 7 is we just have to lower the 7th of the scale by a half step. So now we call it a flat 7. So we're going to do G dominant 7. So my pattern is going to start the same, but instead of going here for the major 7, I'm going to lower that to an F natural in both octaves, and my pattern becomes this. And that's a pretty comfortable pattern for me to play. A little more comfortable than the major 7 just because it's not as big of a reach up here. So next inversion, I'm going to go up here to the second inversion, G major big 3, and I'll do the same thing. I'll lower the 2 F sharps in that shape down to F. And I'll play up from the 5th, flat 7, 1, 3, and my flat 7 on the 3rd string, and then G on the 2nd string, top note there. And then finally I have the root position shape of the G7 chord, G dominant. I'm going to do the same thing like before. Just lowering my F sharps to F. So now this beginning shape is 1, 3, 5, flat 7, that F natural, up to the 1, 3, 5, flat 7 again. So slowly. Next I'm going to cover the minor 7. So this one we just have to lower the 3rd from B down to B flat, and now we've got G minor. I'm going to start by playing up the flat 3, 5, flat 7, then to the 1, flat 3 and 5 on the same fret, flat 7 to the 1, and then back down. Next inversion, second inversion, G minor. And this little 3-string fragment is a cool thing to play with, whether you're on the major, the dominant, or the minor. It's sounds cool to hold those notes together because you have this close interval that adds some interesting tension. So you can play with that as you're playing around with these shapes. The final shape is the root position shape, so I'm going to start just like before, lowering the B's to B flat. So I've got a little more of a reach between my pinky and my third finger here because I'm going up a minor third, and then the fifth, flat 7. Then I'm going up this shape here, which is a very comfortable shape. That's a great shape to know for soloing, and just sits really comfortably in the fingers. So if I go from the beginning slowly, so now I've covered the major 7, dominant 7, and minor 7 in all 3 of those shapes. So I'd like to show you real quick how you could practice these all together, and you can do it by starting with the major 7 in each position, then going to the dominant 7, and then going to the minor 7, and then moving into the next position and doing the same order and the final position. I'll show you just in one position what I'm talking about, and this is a creative way that I think is fun to practice. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. Dominant. Minor 7. Then you could go on from there to the next position. And if you're feeling like you want a little bit more, you can move on to half diminished chords, which just alter one more note. They lower the 5th. So if you take your minor 7 shape and you just lower the 5th of the chord, you get a half diminished 7 chord. The final thing I want to cover is how this relates to chords. So any 7th chord is made up of 4 notes. It's the 1, the root note, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th in relation to any scale. So I'm going to show you just some of the basic chord shapes that go along with these patterns. So if I do my major 7 here, I'm going to go to this shape here. What I played in the arpeggio was this. This note here is the same as this note here. So if I want to make a nice sounding major 7 chord, I can do it like this. 1, 3, 5, 7. And that's a very useful shape. I can also omit the 5th and move the 2nd string up to the 7, so I just have 1, 3 major 7, which is a nice sound too. And if I was playing with a bass player, say they were playing G, I could just play something like that, 3, 5, and 7, which is a B minor triad, but when I omit that G, but if I add the G in, this is a G major 7 chord, so I can easily play that as an G major 7 voicing when I have someone else playing the bass note. So that's probably the most useful shape out of this big shape here. This one, and then that one also. And you can change those to dominant and minor 7. The dominant in this position is a little bit of a reach. You have to spread two frets with this finger, but it's doable. More comfortable and more common is this, omitting the fifth and adding a second octave of the root note. But you can do either one. They sound different, so you can use them in different circumstances. And then if you want to make it a minor 7, you lower that third. And again, this is a double root note, no fifth voicing. I can also do this, which is more challenging. But another good voicing in this position for minor 7 is this one. We've got the 5 on bottom, 1, flat 3, and the flat 7. So that's a nice minor 7 voicing. So now moving up to the next position. The easiest major 7 voicing is this one, which is the same exact voicing as that, but it's just moved onto the next string down, the next lowest string. So I've got my 1, 3, 5, 7. I could make it a dominant. That's a little bit of a stretch, not very easy to play, so a much more common voicing in this position would be this, doing that double root note again and omitting the fifth. You can also move this root down to the fifth here, because you've already got the root on top, and that's a nice voicing for a 7, dominant 7, that's based on this shape. And then minor 7, you've got the same idea that we did with the dominant, but you lower that third, bar your first finger to hit the second and the fourth string, and now you've got 1, flat 3, flat 7, 1. I can do the same thing where I move the root there down to the fifth, and now I've got another nice minor 7 voicing. This one, it's nice to play minor 9 chords. If you move that root note up to the 9 or the 2 of the scale, that's a nice voicing too. So we've got major 7, dominant 7. You can also do that dominant 9th, and then minor 7, minor 9. So those are some of the voicings you can do. So the last one is here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to play this G triad, and I'm going to put the major 7 on the top, because I was playing this, and this is a really easy and great voicing to grab for major 7. And the dominant 7 is easy. I just move that 7 down, keep my first finger the same. For the minor 7, I just move that third down. I'm going to hit 2 strings with my second finger by just kind of flattening it a little bit and putting it in between the 2. Now I've got a minor 7. You can also use 4 fingers if you prefer that. But major 7, dominant 7, minor 7. So those are just some of the voicings that you can play for these chords, these 7th chords, that are connected directly and visibly to the big 3 shapes. That's all I'm going to cover for today, so I hope you got something out of this. Talk to you next time.